Hello, dear listeners of Am I the Asshole podcast. I'm Danny Vega, joined by my lovely, lovable co-host, Sarah. Sarah, I'm not even going to ask you how you are today. I feel like a monster. But look, guys, here's the thing. Sarah and I have been going back and forth. We pretty much did a podcast of voice memos yesterday.
Low-key. Let's just publish that. You know what?
I know. We should just dox ourselves. We're releasing this episode off our normal schedule because this basically is the mainstreaming of Am I the Asshole? We have, of course, the Bad Art Friend piece dropping in the New York Times, and this piece drops, and you know the internet is buzzing a fair amount with this, but really what I see this as is the mainstreaming of Am I the Asshole? Potentially the very title. The very title, Who is the Bad Art Friend, seems to be almost co-opting this thing where people are going to take two sides. It's
truly like the literary elite's Am I the Asshole?
It really is. And it is a juice fest. And I think it's a great Am I the Asshole because, you know, it's a made of many tiny slights. So if you're already familiar with the story, I'll try to put in the description when we actually get to the discussion. We're kind of going to go over the facts first, and then we'll kind of start going at it and figuring out what this thing is made of. So, introducing our main character, Dawn Dorland. She is an Angelino at present. She's an aspiring novelist, a short story writer. In June of 2015, Dawn donated a kidney to a stranger. She then started a private FB group with some of her friends and family and fellow writers from this group called Grub Street, which is not affiliated with the food website, to Sarah's knowledge.
Confusing to me. I was like, why is it called Grub Street? And then the writers group is the Chunky Monkeys. I'm like, you guys are writers, like come up with your own name that's not already trademarked by something. Ridiculous.
Yeah. So she starts this FB group and she puts these folks in it, and then she posted this letter in the group. It's characterized as a letter, but it's not rendered here as a letter. Do you know why it's been characterized as a letter, Sarah? That's never been clear to me.
I think it's just a paragraph from a letter. I think it's excerpted from like kind of an open letter that she wrote to the person that she donated the kidney to.
Oh, got it. Okay. She wrote, "Personally, my childhood was marked by trauma and abuse. I didn't have the opportunity to form secure attachments with my family of origin. A positive outcome of my early life is empathy, that it opened a well of possibility between me and strangers. While perhaps many more people would be motivated to donate an organ to a friend or family member in need, to me, the suffering of strangers is just as real. Throughout my preparation for becoming a donor, I focused a majority of my mental energy on imagining and celebrating you." So Dawn kind of made this into a personality trait. She really ran with this. She'd post on Facebook outside the group on her kidney-versary and would participate in events and stuff.
Like she would be in like I want to say a parade, but I don't know if that was actually real or something that they used to mock her, but she would, you know, like appear as a representative of kidney donors and do things like, and do like events and stuff.
She really went all in on being kidney gal. So,
oh man.
One of the interesting lines in the New York Times piece is that it describes this as one of the most consequential things she would probably ever do, which I wasn't sure if that was a neg or what, but
I think it's kind of, well, here's the thing about the writing, which I actually really enjoy, is because the framing kind of seems to set up that the writer is on Dawn's side, but then if you kind of really look hard at the little like digs and parentheticals, it's like, huh. So yeah, I get what you mean. On the one hand, like, I don't think most of us will do anything as significant as donate an organ until we die, I guess.
So Dawn, really, and I definitely see how someone could do this. If you think about the mechanics of Facebook groups, they're very, very obnoxious. If someone puts you in a Facebook group, you either got to completely hide the notifications right away, because you're going to like really see everything. So Dawn apparently notices that some people in the group hadn't reacted to her post, one of them being Sonya Larson, a fellow writer. So they kind of ran in the same circles of these Boston writers. These are short story writers, which is one of my favorite kind of elements of this story, just because short stories are, you know, it's kind of an obscure genre. Nobody really cares. It's like, obviously we all know, what's her name? Why is Franz Drescher coming to mind? Flannery O'Connor.
Yes.
I would love a Franz Drescher short story, but apparently Dawn believes Sonya to be a close friend, but Sonya didn't see her that way. On July 21st, I'm guessing, is this in 2015 still, Sarah?
Yes.
Dawn emailed Sonya to bring up the kidney donation. She wrote, "How have you been, my dear? I think you're aware that I donated my kidney this summer, right?" Sonya replied, "Ah, yes, I did see on Facebook that you donated your kidney. What a tremendous thing."
Indeed.
Absolutely. The following spring, Dawn and Sonya, our main characters here, ran into each other at a conference where Dawn was salty the kidney wasn't brought up. A brief hello at AWP, the annual writing conference where the subject of Dorland's kidney went unmentioned. So Dawn was in this headspace of like, hey, when the hell are people going to celebrate my kidney?
Right.
A month later, Dawn is even more salty that nobody in the Chunky Monkeys writers group is bringing up her kidney donation. Barely anyone brought up what she'd done, even though everyone must have known she'd done it NY times. Dawn goes to this conference. Nobody mentions her thing. She leaves the conference with this question: do writers not care about my kidney donation? Which kind of confused me because I thought I was in a community of service-oriented people. Which, honestly, this is really where Dawn starts to cross from, like, annoying Facebook kidney promoter into like just wildly self-unaware. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's literally not a group of service-oriented people. Y'all are artists.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like that's those artists who are just like, oh yes, my service is the greater good of humanity or something, where it's like, you're not, I don't know, volunteering for nonprofits, like you're writing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a tough thing. There's kind of a duality to art because, you know, truly great art, I mean, it frankly does change the world. It's incredible the amount of joy you can spend. I mean, you know, some of the classic movies of our time, etc. But like, I once had a friend, a stand-up comedian, say, I do what I do to spread joy. And I was like, no, that's what Santa does, mate. I don't know that's... I think there's a duality to being an entertainer, which is like partly, you know, it's self-indulgent, but then also it does kind of consist of empathy, you know, especially with stand-up, because it's like, it's not really about what you want to do. You got to be funny, and that's really about how people react. But that's really true of any kind of entertainment, right? It's ultimately about how the audience feels and how you make them feel. It's not really about you.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, in June 2016, a year after the kidney donation, Dawn's friend Tom Meek tipped Dawn off to something and wrote on her Facebook, "Sonya read a cool story about giving out a kidney. You came to my mind and I wondered if you were the source of inspiration. Still impressed you did this."
Tom!
Which had to be a nice hit for Dawn, you know, because she's really looking for some validation about this. She's like, I gave the kidney. Where are the compliments?
Seriously. Tom, you messy bitch. He tagged Sonya in that comment.
So this is where they kind of become connected.
Love it.
Sonya had read this, and also I love this story too because it reminds me of stand-up so much. She had read this story at a bookstore in Boston, which, like, low-key, that's kind of an open mic, right? I mean, you're reading a story at a bookstore. How many people are there? 10 days later, Larson wrote back saying that yes, she was working on a story, quote, about a woman who receives a kidney, partially inspired by how my imagination took off after learning of your own tremendous donation. So in her writing, she spun out a scenario based not on Dorland, she said, but on something else. Themes that have always fascinated her. Quote, I hope it doesn't feel too weird for your gift to have inspired works of art, Larson wrote. Now, rereading this, I am kind of like, that does seem to be dripping with like fuck you-ery, especially knowing a little bit about the chronology here, but we'll kind of circle back on that.
It's hard to say because basically, like, she did get acknowledgement pretty early on that there was some kind of connection or inspiration. So I just wanted to like put a pin in that for later.
Absolutely. Dawn pressed it, saying she was a little surprised, quote, given that we're friends. Sonya then backed off, insisting the story was, quote, not about you or your particular gift, but about narrative possibilities I began thinking about. Dawn got even more annoyed at this, writing, quote, it's the interpersonal layer that feels off to me, Sonya. You seem not to be aware of my donation until I pointed it out, but if you had already kicked off your fictional project at this time, well, I think your behavior is a little deceptive, at least weird. I've got to say, I am really with Dawn at that point. It does seem a little odd, like that Dawn could kind of smell that something was going on here.
I do kind of agree, except for the fact that, like, even the way that even her saying you seem to not be aware of my donation until I pointed it out, that's not true. What actually you were meaning is, oh, well, you hadn't congratulated me until I pointed it out. Like, she could have very well been aware you invited her to a Facebook group for the express purpose of congratulating you. So it's kind of like...
But she didn't like or engage in any of the posts, so to kind of ghost the group like that, you know, it's kind of like, what exactly is going on here? So what interaction were you having with this group? You didn't interact with it at all. And so then you kind of like play it off. And so for Dawn, it's sort of like, well, what's going on here? You know, to be fair, she was soliciting likes. So it's a little bit less than a congratulations. But yeah, that is kind of the subtext.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, I noticed you didn't like my picture, but you, I don't know. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Sonya replies, and I actually kind of love this line, quote, before this email exchange, I hadn't considered that my individual vocal support, or absence of it, was of much significance. Which Sarah wrote, translation, bitch, we are not friends. Yeah, and there's a whole social layer here, but Larson was just more established at Grub Street in this community of short story writers.
It's kind of like if you're like the popular kid in high school, everybody feels like they know you and they're friends with you, but you don't actually know any of them. And that's kind of the vibe that I got.
Right. The word parasocial comes to mind.
What does that mean?
Parasocial, it's like this unequal relationship created by social media, but it's like a one-sided relationship, really. That's just an expensive way of putting it. Sonya didn't respond, and Dawn kept emailing multiple times without response. Yeah. So Sonya wrote a story called The Kindest, which she read at the bookstore in 2016. In it, a character whom Sonya reprises many times throughout her work. What does reprises mean? Like revises?
The character sort of appears many times in different forms.
Right. Yes, that's right. So the character is like a recurring character in various short stories.
Yeah.
Gets in a car crash and needs a kidney. She gets one from a wealthy, altruistic white woman who basically wants praise for donating her kidney that the character won't give. Yeah, that's well, I actually read the story. I did my due diligence here, folks.
Oh, how did you find it? All my friends were like, we can't find a copy.
I paid for that. I paid for it.
Can you send it to me?
I guess I could send you screen caps. Oh boy, I just admitted to copyright law infringement. Just kidding. I won't do that.
Never mind. I thought it was like a PDF link or something. Don't send it to me.
In early drafts of the story, the donor's name was, get ready for this, folks, Dawn. Yes, people. Sonya Larson absolutely based this on Dawn, and she was so blatant about it. She literally called the character Dawn. I mean, folks.
Yeah.
She later changed it to Rose. The story was published in 2017 in some place, but as early as August 2016, there was a version of the story available on Audible. So this story had kind of different lives, and this will become relevant. Yet later, a year later, August 2017, American Short Fiction published a print version in June 2018. The magazine dropped its paywall for the story, and the way this is kind of in the New York Times piece is kind of depicted that, you know, Dorland was kind of trying to avoid it, maybe not knowing what to expect or being anxious, but like there's really no way for her to avoid it because, you know, these short story people read all this shit. In this version, here was the letter from the donor. So this is a quote from the version that was released.
June 2018 version.
June 2018 version. I myself know something of suffering, but from those experiences, I've acquired both courage and perseverance. I've also learned to appreciate the hardship that others are going through, no matter how foreign. Whatever you've endured, remember that you're never alone. As I prepare to make this donation, I drew strength from knowing that my recipient would get a second chance at life. I withstood the pain by imagining and rejoicing in you. So we read the letter earlier. I actually think that, you know, if you were to compare these side by side, you could see that it was derivative, but
definitely derivative. I mean, her last sentence is throughout my preparation for becoming a donor, ... I focused a majority of my mental energy on imagining and celebrating you. So it's certainly echoing the letter. Echoing the letter.
Sure. But nobody would call that paragraph compared to the first one plagiarism. Then Dorland learned the story was chosen for Boston's One City, One Story program. It would be distributed throughout the city for free. So just to contextualize that, the One City, One Story program for short story writers is basically Coachella. It's a huge damn deal.
Of Boston, of a very specific type of writer. This is the thing, too, where I'm like, the stakes are so low. No offense.
You know that's what I love. That's what I love about this. The stakes are really couldn't be lower. Dawn reached out to the Boston Book Festival and American Short Fiction to ask what was their policy on plagiarism. Did they know they were publishing something that used someone else's words? She received vague assurances they'd get back to her. So at this point, Sarah, I'm a little confused at the chronology. Why did was Dawn really just operating on a complete hunch at this point that something had happened with these words? I don't think so.
At this point, I think that Dawn is operating on kind of a hunch, kind of like bitterness.
No, how could you say that? She had heard the audio version, or you're saying that happened later in time?
She had not listened to the audio version because you had to pay for it.
Okay, because you wrote later, in late July 2018, Dawn found an audio version of the story earlier than the Audible one, which has the letter as follows.
Yes,
and
so this is
pretty
June.
Much, yeah.
So then a month later, she finds an older version of the story.
I don't know. I don't want to hinge too much on this fact. But look, suffice it to say, this is a point of contention between Sarah and I. Did Dawn know at this juncture that Sonya had plagiarized her? And I don't think we're entirely sure.
No, she didn't, because there's a line in the New York Times piece where it's not until she shows her husband like some version of the letter that the husband is like, oh, okay, now I see what you're talking about. Like before, I think she'd been going on about how she thought Sonya like stole her kidney story, and it really wasn't until she had any sort of like transcript or whatever of what the actual letter said that her own husband like believed her.
Mm-hmm. So you perceive Dawn as doing this in a scramble, a sort of what if, just, what if someone plagiarized, what was their, I guess that's what it says. What was their policy on plagiarism? Did they know? Well, then how could she say, did they know they were publishing something that used someone else's words? How could she have that?
She believes that that's her words, and it's certainly echoing her words. And at this point, she decided to get a lawyer. Like she wasn't sure if she should get a lawyer, if anybody would take it. And then she found a kind of stronger case.
Oh, I see. So you think she saw the version of the text of the letter that we agreed was derivative but not plagiarism, and that set off her alarm bells.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dawn goes on this sort of warpath at this point.
Because even if it's not plagiarism, like if you're already offended personally,
right,
and you're looking and you're like, I don't know, if you're a writer, you're going to be like precious about your words, and if you see something that does certainly mirror your words, even if it doesn't, or echo them, even if it doesn't like lift them off of your Facebook post, I feel like your first response is going to be like, oh, well, this is mine.
So she's on this sort of warpath to literarily cancel Sonya. She reaches out to Grub Street, the Breadloaf Writing Conference in VT, just the silliness of these names, from which Sonya had received a scholarship, and then notified more groups Sonya had a connection with, including Vermont Studio Center and the Association of Literary Scholars, Critics, and Writers. She then emailed 2 editors at the Boston Globe. They didn't bite. July 3rd, 2018, Dawn's lawyer sent the Boston Book Festival a cease and desist.
This is where she pulls out the big guns.
Okay, so then it's in late July 2018 where she finds what some may describe as the smoking gun, the short story Smoking Gun. Pew, pew. Here she finds this audio version of the story where her letter is basically said word for word. So this is dun, 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 plagiarism. That's her new little weapon. Mid-August 2018, Sonya rewords the letter significantly for the Boston Book Festival, but changes the email sign-off from warmly to kindly, which, get this, is how Dawn signs all her emails. Sonya claims that it's just a direct reference to the title. I mean, would anybody really believe this? The whole thing is a hit piece on Dawn, folks.
I don't know. I just think that's kind of wild.
Absolutely wild. I mean, I guess I've been told not to use the word catty. It's certainly a petty little attack to all of a sudden throw on a kindly there, right?
I kind of think, but here's the other thing, like Dawn, it seems very narcissistic. So, you can't own a very common email sign off. Like, she kind of tries to be like, oh, that's my thing. Everybody knows that's my thing. It's like people sign emails with kindly. It's not.
Well, no, but that's what I'm telling you. She did it as a fuck you. It's not a reference to the title. She did it as a fuck you. That's why she did it.
But I'm telling you that Dawn is kind of like an unreliable narrator.
Oh, so you're saying you don't believe that she actually did change her sign off?
I don't believe that everybody knows that Dawn sends her emails kindly.
No, it was a jab at Dawn. It wasn't a jab. It wasn't a generalized jab. It was just to get at. It was just to get at her.
Yes, because she says that she signs all her emails that way.
Yeah. Well, and Sonya knew that.
What I'm trying to say is like she is a very self-centered person, and that is a very common email sign-off.
Yeah, but I don't understand what point you're making. Sonya did that to bother Dawn.
Maybe it wasn't a fuck you. Like maybe it really was.
I mean, I don't even know what to say to that, Sarah. So of course it was a jab. It was a jab. It was, I'm going to reword it, but I'm still going to keep your fingerprint on it. I mean, how can you give her plausible deniability? There's 1,000 where she could have said. I'm
literally telling you how, and it's because Dawn is an unreliable narrator.
I don't think we're going to see eye to eye on this. In August 2018, One City, One Story is canceled due to legal pressure, right? Because Dawn and all her lawyers kept saying all this shit. September 2018, Dawn raised her demands to $15K and added a new demand that Sonya would have to pay her $180K if she ever published The Kindest again. Sonya's lawyers wrote back that Sonya earned a total of $432 from the story and alleged Dawn of making defamatory claims toward Sonya. This, I think, is one of my favorite facts because we are talking about $432 here.
Yeah, this is the thing.
The people who made the most money in this story by far, I mean by 10x.
That's the lawyers. The New York Times reporter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. January 30th, 2019, Dawn and her lawyer were sued for defamation and tortious interference in federal court. Earlier this year, some interesting things came up in discovery, pages and pages of text between Sonya and other members of the Chunky Monkeys. It turns out she had completed her first draft in October 2015, and in January 2016, she texted two friends, "I think I'm done with the kidney story, but I feel nervous about sending it out because it literally has sentences that I verbatim grabbed from Dawn's letter on Facebook. I've tried to change it, but I can't seem to. That letter was just too damn good. I'm not sure what to do, feeling morally compromised like a good artist, but a shitty person."
Boom, and there's the smoking gun. That actually didn't come towards the end of the piece, but like, I feel like that's most important. I think it's still kind of winding its way through court. No real resolution yet, which I think is why Dawn pitched this to the Times. This is still being settled in court. I don't think so. This story, I just bought the story. I'm pretty sure this is relatively settled. They're still chewing away at this. What does it say at the end? I didn't say that anyone was dropped. It didn't say at the end where if anybody had dropped a suit or if anybody had paid anybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly Dawn didn't win if you just bought a copy of the piece, so
right.
Let's see.
I mean, look, I don't know. Honestly,
it ended on like Dawn attending online events that Sonya was at, and Sonya seeing that Dawn was there. Mm-hmm. That was where the piece ended. Yeah, this creepy, like almost stalkerish vibe. Some people had said. Oh. Yeah, so I guess let me just kind of open this up. Hopefully we won't have to debate too much on the facts. I mean, there's enough here to definitely power a true crime podcast and a half, despite actually crimes being committed. Thankfully, I did not talk about it on the true crime podcast today because I would be like done. I mean, look, from the outset, I've felt that I want to look at this through the lens of, you know, who is the bad art friend, which is Dawn kind of levied this at Larson, right? Because basically she felt she said that Sonya was saying that to her. Oh, is that true? She said that Sonya was accusing her of being the bad art friend and being like, well, you know, I'm not obligated to tell anybody whom I base my characters or literary like devices off the fact that I'm doing that, which is like technically true. But here's the thing, that doesn't make it not crappy. On whose behalf? The person doing it. But here's the other thing. So initially I was very much like, well, they were friends. Sonya should have told her, like, this is kind of what is happening here. But then I was like, but they actually weren't friends. And this was kind of someone that she disliked. Right. So I get why she wouldn't tell her. Because it's like, hey, I based this not likable character off of a very noble thing you did. Like, I don't see that conversation, but like, no, but it's not an indictment on you though. But like, I just don't see that conversation playing out well. Yeah, I mean, for me, first of all, I guess having read The Kindest, I thought it slapped. I thought it painted a character.
Yeah, I thought it painted a really interesting character. I'm not going to fully say I understand a lot of the racial elements of it, but for me, it was simply a despicable person, a narcissist. I know that she had written that there's a white savior component, and I'm not really literate enough to know like how that played into it. But I thought it was a great character, very plausible character. Definitely run into folks like this, and I think it was a powerful story. And damn, I got to admit that I kind of do think that, you know, it's based on Dawn. And I think that's one of the reasons this was so hurtful for Dawn. I think Dawn is a very hurt person. And I do think she's a narcissist, which is, I believe, in the New York Times piece. I think she's trying to find validation for this thing she did. And that's, you know, very obvious in the Facebook group, right? It's kind of like, well, what are you doing? You know, it's one of the tragedies of donating a kidney is that it is a tremendous thing and it's a wonderful thing. It's also really, it's not interesting. It's like, okay, you're getting a surgery you didn't have to get. You know, that's annoying. That's horrible. Nobody likes surgery, and you're giving it to someone. That's good. That's good. And that's really kind of the story. Like, it's really just not that inherently interesting. It's much more interesting that Dawn cannot seem to find satisfaction in what she did. And in fact, the letter speaks to that. The fact that she wrote a letter to the person she was donating the kidney to, it was this very like, I want more. You know, it wasn't really about giving the kidney. It was about receiving something for giving the kidney.
Yes. Interesting gift sort of dynamic that we talk about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, for our regular listeners, and you know, I have serious qualms with gift giving. If it's really not a gift. If you expect anything in return, it truly isn't a gift, you know, and that really is what I think Dawn is for. And the thing is, ultimately, I see a lot of myself in Dawn. I've definitely had large stretches of my life where I was kind of like this, like, please come to my birthday party vibes. And what that really was about was, you know, kind of milking this, you know, cultural construction of a birthday party so I could get attention and love. But in the end, that was really not what I needed to do. I needed to work on my art and be a productive artist. And maybe I am projecting, but I see a lot of that in Dawn. And the New York Times piece certainly positions Sonya as kind of having a lot more success and honestly a lot more work than Dawn. I did compare their Twitter presences, and they're actually pretty close. So
Sonya's private, apparently.
Well, I think she went private.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have if I were her.
Yep, same.
But yeah, I guess I really just don't feel that Dawn ever really did anything too wrong here. You know, I think that Sonya was kind of gaslighting her and not really coming clean about what was going on. I think her and the Chunky Monkeys were really roasting the shit out of Dawn for a long time. And I'm not going to say for a single second I wouldn't have done the same thing. I would have done exactly that. It's so cringy to start a Facebook group soliciting likes for your kidney donation, and in the kindest, you know, the altruistic white lady, you know, really wants to get a picture with the recipient of the kidney donation, you know, and it's just really like cringy moment.
Cringe.
And obviously I see that as a pretty transparent kind of heightening. I don't know if Dawn actually did that, but, you know, someone who would write a letter to the recipient obviously is kind of cut of the same cloth of, please take a picture so I can show people. So I can show people how good I am.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so initially I did kind of feel like Sonya went on this like semi-gaslighting campaign, but then when I reread it, it was like she didn't gaslight her in not liking the initial post. She also kind of owned up to it pretty right away. Like, once Tom stirred the pot, she did own up to it.
Right.
So then I'm not really sure if it's, I don't know, I'm not super sure that she like did gaslight. I feel like she, I don't know, responded as anyone would respond. Again, if you base a not super likable character on someone whom you don't like, who that person is now confronting you, like, you're going to try to put a little bit of distance between there. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Like, she did say it initially, like, yes, I was inspired by how my imagination took off, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think much of the same way Dawn is kind of blinded by her own need for validation, I think Sonya was a bit blinded by dunking on Dawn. Like, in her mind, she had almost dehumanized Dawn, and it was perfectly acceptable for her to do this. And because of that, and because of the chunky monkey dynamic and clowning on her so much, she sort of felt like, yeah, I mean, who gives a shit? I'm allowed to do this. I got my friends behind me, and fuck you. I'm calling her Dawn in the story. Like, I'm calling her Dawn in the story. I'm not even going to hide that shit, you know? And I think her attachment to Dawn's text, etc., and I actually do give her credit because it does really kind of work. It really does work. But
yeah, it does.
After having read Sonya's writing, I think she's a amazing writer. So I think she had an attachment there to that original text that was born out of a personal animosity toward Dawn. And I think that came from her and her friend dynamic, which many people have labeled simply mean girls.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that it's like anybody who's inviting you to a Facebook group they've created, they're either selling you on a multi-level marketing thing that you don't want to be a part of, or like nothing good is coming out of that group. I think that the writers hiding behind the like, oh, well, fiction is fiction and I'm not required to tell anybody, like blah, blah. Like, I just think that's a little bit like you're hiding behind an excuse. And like, this is Am I the Asshole podcast. This is not Am I Technically Required. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm also 100% with you that that she plagiarized the letter in the early forms. But I guess my question is, like, is Dawn's reaction proportionate? Because she was absolutely personally embarrassed. And if this had been distributed to 30,000 people throughout the Boston Festival, she would have been embarrassed. But I don't know that that version was plagiarized. And she's also suing her for, like, I can't do math, like what, 30 times what Sonya made. Well, she
didn't necessarily know all the numbers. I mean, for me,
well, if she's filing a suit, she needs to find out the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to get upset at Dawn for being litigious because part of her smelled what was cooking, and she was right. That's the thing, and we've said this a lot. Like, look, here's the thing. If you check your partner's phone, right, because you think they're cheating on you, and you're wrong, you're an asshole. Like, you broke their trust, you went into their private device, and that's not okay. You were wrong. That you were wrong about the facts. Your assessment of the facts was wrong. But if you do that and you check your partner's phone and you're right, then you just smelled what was cooking. And honestly, it's just not a sin anymore. It's not.
Well, like, I think at that point, it's beyond that because it doesn't really matter because that relationship is like dissolved.
But that's what I mean, Sarah. Dawn smelled what was cooking. She thought there was more here and she was right. But
I guess I don't like the idea that the ends justify the means necessarily.
Well, not necessarily.
And I'm trying to find out if the means are justified at all. Woo. Trying to follow my own metaphor here. Not really metaphor.
You're hurting my head with that. I think she knew something was up. I think she felt it was shady. She felt there was something weird here. And the thing is,
she felt something is weird, but I also just think that she felt something is weird because of her own like self-centeredness.
Sure. But in the end,
I'm like, is that fair?
I think it is. For me, it's like, look, if she had dug in and found that there was no plagiarism, then I would say, like, that's not okay. You know, like, you basically tried to soil someone's name completely baselessly. But in the end, Dawn was right. This, in fact, was plagiarism. It was far more than an inspiration. It was actually stealing her words, and that is not okay.
Yes, that is not okay. But, okay, here's my question is, because she stole her words in an early version.
That was published. Published version.
Yeah, and those shouldn't have been published. That audio version where she stole the words. Mm-hmm. But then in subsequent rewrites, that's where it's like getting murkier for me. Because like that's maybe a derivative of plagiarism. Like I'm not completely sure.
Yeah, but the sin of plagiarism, it's more of a mark against your character. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's just like a character and like an academic infraction.
Yeah, I don't even know necessarily that it's criminal per se. I think it's civil, but
certainly not. I don't think it's criminal.
Yeah, I don't think the cops are going to break down your door for a short story. But yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of like this, Sarah. Like, to me, it's like Sonya wrote this in a place that really, really, as much as she tried to pretend, was a very, very personal attack. And she really exercised almost no effort in cloaking that. And that shows in the name, and it shows in the plagiarism. And I don't think that was about laziness. I really don't. I actually think
I don't either. No, I think it was like, I'm annoyed and I want to channel this annoyance.
Yeah, we all fucking hate her.
Into my story.
Isn't this funny? Like, it was. I bet it was pretty funny to them. Like, damn, Dawn's gonna get hers with this. Cause look, Dawn's kind of annoying. I mean, look, I don't think that's beyond refute. I would way rather be friends with Sonya, all said and done. But I really just don't think that Dawn did anything all that wrong. I mean, you're right. She was very litigious, but she was plagiarized, and she did have a right. And look, it's not like Dawn tried to nuke her whole career. She said, stop trying to publish the kindness.
She did.
Like, bail on this story.
I think she did try to nuke her whole career when she was like reaching out to all these organizations that had like, we don't even know, current association with her. I think it was about this specific story, but it also wasn't. I think they both went on personal attacks because she's reaching out to scholarships that you don't even know if this story had anything to do with it. And like all these other organizations emailing editors at the Boston Globe. Like, she wanted this to be a story.
Like I said, it's just I can't let go of the fact that she may have just been lucky. I can give you that, right? But like, for me, she just smelled what was cooking on some level. Like, she thought it was derivative.
On some level, but then that's why I'm just like, okay, suing to stop like the publication of the story, sure, whatever, if that's plagiarized. Going to all these organizations and these like professional circles, like she emailed the Chunky Monkeys. She emailed the Boston Globe twice to get a story about it. She pitched it to the New York Times. At that point, it's not about the plagiarism because your lawsuit is in court. It is about a smear campaign. And I feel like they both did their own like little literary smear. Like, Sonya did it with the story, and then Dawn is doing it with all the subsequent like contacting and making this a story.
I agree, but the thing is, it wasn't really a smear. It was technically valid that Sonya had done something unethical here, and the story had like unethical roots. You know, it was also a reaction to. It was Sonya who took this. You know, if someone punches you in the face and you punch them back, that doesn't make you an asshole.
If someone punches you in the face and you wait 3 years to punch them back and then sue them from assault, like, I think that you are an asshole.
Well, I see what Dawn did.
This is the thing. It's not like an immediate in the moment reaction. Like, this is like many actions that are very calculated and thought out. I just don't think that anybody emerges from this story like clean.
No. I mean, look, I think Dawn's a terrible person. I do. I'm struggling to really come for her behavior in this. I think Dawn's problem is she's not writing. She's not writing. She's posting about the damn kidneys. Enough. We get it. Dawn, we're proud of you. For what it's worth, I really am. I think it's great that you did that. Just enough. We get it. It was amazing. It was tremendous. Enough with the kidneys. You know, we get it. Write a story.
Or just join a group of people who've donated kidneys. Like, that's who's going to care. And that's who's going to congratulate you on your kidneyversary. That's not what Dawn needs. Like, don't rope people that you barely know into this.
I'm telling you, Sarah, that I Googled these motherfuckers and I looked up all their shit. Dawn, I don't see you putting out content. What's going on? I went through your Twitter. It's all retweets.
Oh my
Let's
God.
go. It's time to write, sweetheart. It's the only thing that matters to you. Enough. Drop the lawsuit and write some fucking prose.
Good Lord.
That's why you're upset. I mean, I see so much of myself in this because I've been so unhappy and I've been so petty and I've gone to these places and I see that as her mindset. I just think that Sonya was really freaking mean and she clowned on her. She low-key ostracized her from this group. She kind of got like, she poisoned the well for Dawn. Everybody knew it was about Dawn. It was like a transparent like hit piece. It was a localized hit piece. I don't think you can
poison a well for people who don't like you anyway, but we can agree that like, that it was pointed at her.
it was pointed at her and everybody got her and she was the butt of everyone's joke. And it was just kind of mean. That's it. It was really mean, frankly. And the fact that she had no inclination to cloak it and hide it and just, change the name. The fact that took her years to implement, Sarah, I think that's why I give Dawn
I don't know about the name and how long that took, but the letter, yes.
I mean, even penning the story using her name so transparently is kind of, it's just so cruel. Come on.
I'm not going to come for people in their first drafts.
But
it's easier.
It's almost like she wrote the first draft out of hate. That's what I've been trying to say this whole time, is that there was a level of vindictiveness here, and that Sonya on some level during this time, her and the Chunky Monkeys roasting all day, probably putting some pretty good memes in there, and I hope those go public. That she just
put in a FOIA request for the memes.
Yeah. That they just wanted to just rip apart Dawn and look, I don't like Dawn. I get it. I get it, but it was too far. It was too far. I think
you're going too far, because I do agree that this was born out of annoyance or possibly other stronger adjectives, but I do really believe that the Dawn character, who later became the Rose character, was an amalgam of Dawn and other shitty white people that Sonya has interacted with throughout her life. So, especially because she doesn't even know her well enough to be yes, I've turned your being into a character. She was based off of her.
Sure.
But there is an element there are elements that are not her. So,
well, of course, it's fiction, but Sarah, the plagiarism and the name, I mean, come on, it was very much based on her.
Yeah, I'm saying it was based off of her, but I'm just there are also so many, I mean, I'm imagining you read it, there are other parts of that story. So
yeah, there are.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
I'm giving her more leeway basically than you.
Well, I think it's a powerful story. I don't even really care if it is totally based on her. My problems are...
I feel it can't be, because she doesn't even know this woman. They've met a handful of times.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that she left the fingerprint there, and she left the fingerprint there, and the fingerprint being the plagiarized words. And she put the name in, and that all that shit had to do with the fact that this came from a place of true cruelty. I mean, it was just completely unnecessary, and it was it was dehumanizing. She just really didn't see that Dawn was a person, and it's probably because she's an annoying ass person, and that's what I've been trying to say here. So there's some pretty good comments here in the New York Times. Mian wrote, there are multiple issues here, a bit jumbled together. Does Larson have the right to use other people's events as a springboard for a fictional story? Yes, although I'm sure it feels weird to the person who's the inspiration. She could have told Dorland, but she was not obligated to do so. IMO. I think we agree there, right? That's fine.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic, because if it's someone that you actually know, I would say that you are obligated to tell them. But in this situation where one person thinks you're friends and the person who's writing it doesn't think so, it creates a weird dynamic for me.
Right.
But no, not obligated.
LP in Los Angeles writes, I have a different take on this. So Dawn donates a kidney. I mean, who cares? Then posts about it, then gets involved in a more public way. And a bunch of writers secretly deride her. Why exactly? Guilty they aren't doing enough? Just plain pettiness? No. I mean, the reason is because it's such a blatant grab. That's why they were roasting her, which I frankly think is valid. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really obnoxious, honestly, to be that, sanctimonious.
Yeah. LP goes on. Then one of those writers, Larson, uses the feeling she feels about this kidney donation to craft a story using Dawn's actual words.
That's what I'm saying. It's about the feeling she feels. But anyway, continue.
Yes,
Sorry.
But she used Dawn's actual words, never telling her. And then Larson has the gall to use racism as a defense. As a BIPOC artist, I take a...
BIPOC.
Is that how you say that? As a BIPOC artist, yeah. I take offense to Larson's recharacterization of what she in fact did. Steal, plagiarize, and, well, not illegal, Larson's ruthless backstabbing of someone she found ridiculous. It makes it harder for artists of color to cite racism when it actually occurs. What was happening to Larson during her quote-unquote summer of hell and beyond was a result of her own lack of integrity and dishonesty. And yes, I'll say it, entitlement. I don't really want to jump into the racial side of this, but I just wanted to read that.
We can't. No, we can't, we are not really qualified to weigh in. I don't know. I think, honestly, what I think it kind of boils down to is Sonya did a bad thing. And she kind of just got unlucky. Like, she messed with the wrong person who decided to, like, go on an investigation. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, Sonya did a bad thing. She did a mean thing. I mean, I ultimately do think she was right. I think she created something truly great. So I can't comfort her on that note. Bay Fixum from New York wrote in the Times, I think it obscures the fact that Larson feigning friendship with Dorland by participating in that FB group while viciously attacking her behind her back in private with some of their mutual group members who Dorland also thought were her friends is utter betrayal. Then going on to use her letter verbatim in the Audible version is perhaps legal, but surely unethical. So I think this is a great point because, look, she could have just left the group and nobody really talks about that option. But instead, she just kind of stays in the group. And in staying in the group is kind of implying, like, I'm on board for this. I'm not just sitting here roasting the shit out of it. Like, that's kind of me in itself, just sitting there picking at her, you know?
I don't know, because this all happened really fast.
Bay Fiction.
You know? Like, she wasn't even, it doesn't seem like she was even sitting in the group very long before she wrote this.
Yeah, she wrote it.
And then it's also like, if this woman is going to email you multiple times without a response because you didn't like her kidney post or whatever, like, what's she going to do when you leave her Facebook group? It's always just a risk assessment.
That's fair. That's fair. No, that's fair. Dawn's definitely unhinged. Yeah, I guess, Sarah, I mean, I struggle to feel like Dawn really did anything wrong. She fought the story tooth and nail. Like, yes, if Sonya had not plagiarized and it was just the name, it really wouldn't be much to it. But ultimately, I view it as a smelling what's cooking. And for me, that exculpates the legal side, you know. And also, we didn't really talk about this, but the actual content of what was plagiarized was also pretty, like, disclosing. I mean, to gank something like this for your story, again, I feel like this took an element of dehumanization. And this is really not a critique of Sonya as an artist, because I think she's on point. And narcissism is marked by trauma and abuse, folks. But also just speaking to this dehumanizing aspect and like, look, maybe that's what it takes to make great art, but goddamn, I mean, look at what she stole. Personally, this opens the opener here of the excerpt. Personally, my childhood was marked by trauma and abuse. I didn't have the opportunity to form secure attachments with my family of origin. Pretty much a worst case scenario for a person. But you know, like,
good point.
And look, I think these things are hard, and we talk a lot about this, and we've talked a lot, like, about personality disorders on this pod, and like the thing is, like, in the end, you know, she's a person. She might be a shitty person, but you still got to be a little kind. And I just feel like there was really no kindness exercise here. And maybe it was in service of great art, but I actually think I'd be underselling her talent as a writer to say that she couldn't have rewritten this or reconceptualized this some way and still made it work. I truly think she could have done that with relatively low effort.
Yeah, I think she easily could have and just chose not to. And I don't think we disagree on that point, but I just personally feel like, especially at the end, Dawn's reaction, it becomes a little bit over the top and also kind of stalkery. So that's where I am resting right now. And I don't feel comfortable saying that she did nothing wrong, because I don't think any of these actions like really exist in a vacuum. And I think it all just kind of like, to me, I have to factor in like the overall character and everything like that.
I think Dawn wants to be apologized to. And
at first I was like, well, I think if Sonya had just acknowledged from the beginning, but then I went back and read it and I was like, well, she kind of did. So I don't feel that anything Sonya could have said, except for literally saying, oh my God, congrats on your kidney, the second that she posted about it, would have really changed this dynamic.
Larson did apologize. You're right on that note. She wrote, Larson answered this time, this is from the New York Times. Larson answered this time, I see that you're merely expressing real hurt, and for that I truly am sorry. She wrote that on July 21st. I myself have seen references to my own life in others' fiction, and it certainly felt weird at first, but I maintain that they have a right to write about what they want, as do I, and as do you. I don't really view that as a real apology, though, because I feel like the inclusion of the plagiarism really does speak to something there, you know, like it wasn't just like a reference. It was like a direct. It was your life. You know, the letter. It was your life. That was her life.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, at first I was like, well, maybe if she had kind of warned her about the inspiration early, but then I was like, well, she actually did. So I'm kind of like, I'm okay on that point. I don't know that anything she would have done except for literally, like, I was thinking about this. I was like, could she have changed the organ? And then I was like, well, aside from bone marrow or a lung, what else can you donate while you're alive?
No, I ran that as well, and I think you're right. I think that
like, can you do a liver transplant while you're alive? Maybe.
I don't know.
Doesn't have the same weight, right? Because you're not giving away one whole organ.
Yeah, no.
You're giving away like a part of it.
No, it had to be a kidney donor. I'm kind of with that. I mean, look, I'm sure Sonya could have thought of something else that would be analogous to a truly unnecessary donation. I mean, you could also donate money, like whatever. So there's other ways around this. But look, I don't, that to me is not the sin. It's not, the sin is not stealing of the story. The sin was that this was born of cruelty, and that the transparent fingerprinting that was marked by the plagiarism, to me, was not an artistic sin, really, because it was just a few sentences, and they were kind of bangers that fit the piece. And let's face it, Dawn's letter was just an annoying, indulgent thing. Get therapy, by the way. Dawn, that's another thing for you to consider. Imagine Dawn becomes a patron after this.
Yikes. Actually, that would be great, because then we could get the exclusive tea.
I actually did contact Sonya on her website, and I was like, I'm really gonna have to dial back whatever I think.
No, you didn't.
I did, but she.
What did
I
you
was
do?
just like, hey, will you be on the podcast? But then I accidentally submitted the form early, so it was just like, will you be? It looked insane. It was just like, hello, will you be on podcast? Submit, and I was like, oh, there's no way. It's over. I sent it.
Oh God, no. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sarah, I don't think we're too far off here. I think Dawn is a hurt person. I think everything about her is socially on the inept side. I think she was also cruelly kind of excluded, and you know, there was roasting and trash talking going on behind her back. Did she deserve it? Probably not deserve. She probably needed a friend to be like, Dawn, like, you're not, what are you doing? You know, and I don't know why that friend wasn't there.
That's a problem, but it's like, who wants to be that friend?
I do.
Few people will step up to be that friend.
I'm that friend, and I've lost friends being that friend. It's a
wow, good for you.
It's a lonely world when you're brutally honest, or maybe just brutal. Sometimes it is brutal, right? Sometimes you're just wrong, and they're like, that's actually not true. But in the end, wow, we really did it. We really did this thing. AITA for being the bad art friend. I think that Sonya is the bad art friend here more than Dawn. I think she was in a headspace where she had kind of dehumanized her, and I think Dawn reacted to that, and in her self-centeredness smelled what was cooking. Maybe she didn't really smell it, but whatever. She happened to be right, and I think the reason that Sonya did that shit is because she was so mean and honestly adamant on nuking Dawn because she was in the Chunky Monkeys group, and that was a little microculture that they cultivated. And for me, that is the bad art friend aspect. Whereas Dawn kind of coming for her, I view as a reaction, and you know, I don't love it. It's certainly not good, but I just think that Sonya was the aggressor here, and Dawn did what she could to strike back. That's how I see this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she was like petty at first. I think it's like you're frustrated with someone, again, who you really don't know. And like, so you're going to write something about them, and then you're doing revisions, and it becomes less about them. So that's where I land. I don't know. To me, I'm just like, that is life. That is, you know, it is what it is. Like, people are going to write from their emotions when they're feeling them. Right. So, and I think Sonya's wrong for the plagiarizing. And this clearly, at least initially, was very much about Dawn. Maybe it kind of distanced itself from that in earlier or later versions. But I'm feeling like Dawn's reaction is out of proportion. She's pitched it to multiple news outlets. she's trying to kind of blow up her spot now. So, and she got what she wanted, perhaps. So there we go. For me, they're both the bad art friend, or I would have just given it a hearty ESH. But that's where I land.
Yeah, I guess.
And I never want to talk about this again.
I know. I'm so excited. I actually dreamt about it last night, and I'm so excited to be done. There are a couple other takes here. I saw this on Twitter. Now I'm very self-conscious because I don't have citation for this. Someone on Twitter who wasn't me said that Tom Meek is actually the enemy and the ultimate bad art friend. He's the one.
No. Oh my God. That's so funny.
He's the one who tipped Dawn off that Sonya was starting to read a story about giving a kidney. By the way, also, Tom, why did he call it a cool story? I wouldn't say it was a cool story. Like, cool.
Hey, if you're an artist, you're like, oh, this emotionally devastating thing or whatever is cool.
Yeah, I just watched Schindler's List. It sure was rad. Tom, what's going on with you? We're worried. Well, we did it, guys. That was AITA for being the bad art friend. Damn, that was epic. Big up to our new patrons, Lindsay, Krissa, Hannah. Welcome. And that's it. This is a one situation episode. And I did say some mean things and I did yell. But in the end, I really, truly wish both of these authors a happy writing career. And it was cool because I don't really read short stories. So I ran in and I read The Kindest. And I was like, I like a short story because I'm pretty stupid. I don't want to read too long. So I was on Dawn's website. I don't even think Dawn has a website. And I'm actually very eager to read her work as well. So even though I did say some things.
I think she talks. I think she talks the talk, but she's not walking the walk.
I think so too.
So start walking the walk. Put up or shut up. What other cliche can I say?
Hell yeah. I hope we can read their stories on the air. Maybe Dawn is sucked up writing fake AITA posts, which if you are, Dawn, thank you.
Oh, man. She made up the story about the mother-in-law buying the wedding dress for her 50th birthday.
Ooh, that was a classic.
That was such a classic.
All right, guys, that's the ep. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.